Right. So I have today we're going to do desserts. We finished beverages and we finished some fruit earlier. And if we go through what we've done in the past, I'll just try to cover what I'm trying to do with you during this the food illustration process. So when we think about illustrating food, that's not a topic that most people really indulge in. So we don't see much of food illustration, maybe just in menu cards or something like that. So our exposure, oh, I'm gonna have to change my screen also. This is what happens. Um, Wait a minute. I need to change my backdrop. I don't know how it's come and I don't know how to get rid of it now. Okay. Okay, there we go. All right. So, Malika, this is for you. Just so you know what we've been through so far. Um, I normally insist on a certain amount of sketching to get your hand moving. So even today we are going to make sketches. The sketching is mostly to just focus on your hand, not so much the end result. Very often we land up focusing so much on how the illustration should look that we erase too frequently. We're in a rush to make certain shapes. So I want to address all of those. And every time you are about to illustrate something, it helps to sketch. So the sketching will be part of it is so that the hand gets warmed up. The hand sees the object in as the reference image and also in this blank space of white paper. So you start seeing proportions, and in that also you will start seeing certain details, which will then get translated into monochromatic tonal scheme, and then eventually we turn it into color. When we do this process, we will notice the different things which I will tell you about the highlights, midtones, shades, colors, all of that. I will be breaking down the colors for you so that you know what to mix from this color set. Now, if you are familiar with this color set, we're sorted. If you don't know the names of the colors, there is a chit in there which has all the colors written. At some point, it would be nice if you make a color chart. I'll show that to you sometime during class how you can make a color chart on the same paper so you know what the colors look like uh, on this paper itself. Every time you change the paper and color relationship, you should make a color chart to see how things work. So all the names will be given. Keep your color chart somewhere. Use the lid for mixing colors. We don't need too much paint, so you don't need a separate palette also. And I'll show you how to write this down also. Your page must look very presentable. So as far as possible, avoid making random marks to test paint. Keep a spare sheet of paper around if you want to, just to check for consistency. And anyway, sometimes it helps to keep it as a guard sheet to when you're pencil sketching so that you don't disturb all the lead. Now I'm a little bit of an OCD about the composition. Every time your page must be well composed. So I will try to give you tips on what you can make where and in what size. And if you feel at a loss, ask me. It might take a few tries for you. You will need to ask me a few questions. After that, you'll understand basically how the process works. Okay, so I'll share the images that I have selected for today's session. We've gone through, yeah, sorry. First, I'll explain what we've gone through. So we've done this just food and food plated as the first class. Then we did beverages. So this one, I just didn't have time last week to complete it. But when you're on the group, I'm going to forward you a picture of one of the students, Susan, who has completed the picture. And she's going to be taking the classes for the next month and a half while I'm traveling. So I'll share this recording with you also if you want to. So you can go through this and see how what I had taught in painting this glass of some cocktail. So we moved from just raw fruits to beverages to shiny fruit today, shiny foods. So usually desserts. And we're going to do small elements at a time. We're not going to do something very complicated, focusing more on the shiny bit of this little cupcake or the shine on the strawberry and that chocolate dipping or the shine on the chocolate glaze. So that's what we're going to focus on. How to create contrast in your food illustrations. So to begin with, we will start with sketching this out. And in sketching, I'll first show you how we visualize this in very easy shapes. Everything that you see around you can be broken down into a circle, square, rectangle, triangle, just a few lines and directional lines. So let's take the cherry, for example. Cherry is a circle or a part of a circle. Now, even if we are thinking about what part of a circle, you can tell that if I break the circle in half, this is half of the circle horizontal, half vertical. Then I can continue breaking this into quarters and eighths and give myself a grid so that I know exactly where I have to make the slanted top of the cherry. Similarly, where I make the cherry end at the bottom. These are the very things that we don't usually have when we see a reference image, or actually in real life, you never get a grid. So based on this, we can make all the other parts as well. You might be able to make maybe a rectangle right below, which is about the same height of the circle on top, or in proportion to that circle, maybe a little bigger or a little smaller. Likewise, another rectangle at the bottom, which is about the same size. So this at least gives you some reference points to begin work on a blank sheet with. The placement of the cherry obviously is not at center, but it's not completely on the side. So it's somewhere between the center and the middle of the left. Okay, so are you able to see placement of objects and their proportions with this grid? I will share this. Oh, actually, I should share even the stock with you. So we will use this proportion to start sketching. I will share this with you right now. Okay, now first things first, don't use an eraser for this sketching. Keep your eraser out, or better still, just throw it out of the nearest window so you're not tempted to use it. You won't need it. because we are going to draw with very light lines. So don't hold your pencil so close that you put the regular pressure on pencil as we need to put when we are writing. Hold it really far away. Hold it a little sideways so that you can see what is happening. Not like this, because this is a very unnatural hold to draw with. When you hold it sideways and a little far away, automatically you can't put too much vertical pressure down on the tip, so you'll end up making very light lines. Second thing, most important, hold the book with your non-dominant hand. Keep yourself balanced. Don't hold your chin, don't hold your head, don't keep your hand on your knee. Your left hand, if that is your non-dominant hand, must be on your book, and your hand then is anchored and can freely make all sorts of movements. So it's much easier. Now, to start with, we will start drawing the grid because that is the most prominent. Hold the book. Don't hold your chin. I'm going to keep telling you this very often. Trust me, all the others, I have told them, I've broken that habit out of them. They will vouch for it. And they don't. So much so that even when I'm not present and they're practicing at home, they hear my voice in their heads. Hold the book, hold the book. It's like a mantra. Right. So hold the book and start off with the dominant lines you see. So you see a circle, exactly like how I had started drawing it. And when you make a circle, don't just make one finite circle. Make your hand go around a little bit. Then make the vertical, horizontal line. Make all the lines that I have made first in the circle. So you break this. Oh, I've drawn this too close to the edge, so I won't be able to draw a full stalk, but that's okay. Then the baseline here, then you know how to draw that edge, the top of the cherry here, and then emerging stalk from the top. Then we will draw a rectangle. Now, when you're drawing the rectangle, use this line, the center line of the circle first. Based on where the center line of the circle is, you will get a reference point for a line on the right of that line and a line on the left of this line. Now, this is one of 4 parts of a rectangle. So this one part is repeated on the left and twice on the right. So this gives you the proportion of the rectangle. The cupcake is not filling the whole rectangle, mind you, but the rectangle is a starting point, and the height of the rectangle is about the height of the circle, so somewhere over here. Then a little inside from the first rectangle, you make the second rectangle at the bottom. It's a little on the right from the left side, a little inside, and then goes all the way to meet the other side. Now, in these lines, you'll start seeing the possibility of that cupcake, the frosting, and the cherry. And using what parts of the cupcake you see in what parts of the rectangle and the circle, you now start adding shapes. So the top part of the frosting, there are 2 swirls. The top swirl ends much, much closer to the central squares than to the outside of the square. This has also become too long, too wide. And then the second swirl starts a little higher than the middle point, on the sides. And so this line over here that separates the two is almost like a curve along the sides. The bottom swirl starts just below the top swirl, goes pretty straight, and then curls upward. Yeah, so are you able to see these shapes now in the context of the grid that we have created? So this is the method that I use, where you study the internal geometry of the object. Conventionally, the technique is to just make a uniform square grid. So you would probably put some 1 centimeter by 1 centimeter grid on top of this and follow each line according to its placement on the grid. So you will mark the grid on the left with A, B, C, D, E, and on the top with 1, 2, 3, 4, and literally like charting something on a map, you will then measure the coordinates and make that line. That is also a perfectly objective way of drawing, and it definitely works, no doubt about it. But I have also found a lot of merit in using this technique because this relies a lot on uh, your eyes taking the measurements. And at some point, you should become so comfortable with how you see things around you in the world that this grid making should just become an automatic process. All right, now once this is done, you've marked everything in its place. This is at best going to be like an 19-20 accuracy. You can now start adding other elements like the syrup that is flowing. With every element that you add in your drawing, it starts becoming closer and closer to the real thing. So if there is a dark line running across what's a white space, that dark line will condense the white space to a certain extent after you've put it in. Till then, the white space seems very wide. Even if it's on the grid, you'll keep doubting yourself and thinking, why is it looking so wide? Why is it looking so wide? Because it's not broken up by dark shapes, which are this cherry syrup. And in that, you will make a marking to indicate all the other parts you see. So there is a little, I don't know how there's a water droplet over here, but there is something. Don't even think about what it is. If you see a circle, draw a circle. If you see a highlight in the shape of a crescent, draw that. Just draw all these out as outlines, wherever you see, to the best of your ability, always. At this point, you suspend judging whether or not your shape is accurate till all the items are in place. There's a little bit of candy or caramel or nougat, whatever it is. It's a rough shape. Make those rough shapes. Now, when you're making these rough shapes also, refrain from making a random rough shape. Like I've noticed a lot of times people will make a random rough shape like this. This is too rushed. This is not a random shape. This is like part flower, part cloud, not like that. Look at the shape in front of you and notice whether it has got a slight vertical line, maybe a horizontal line. Then it goes straight, then it goes inside a little bit, and then it comes out, then there's an indent. So it's a very thoughtfully made shape, which will not look like anything other than the silhouette of the shape that you see over here. So the shape over here again is like a little bulbous on top. I can't tell you the importance of making these tiny things also very accurately. The grid is still kept on the page because all these elements you want to position in the right place. And you never know when you might need to use that grid for support. It's almost like the scaffolding on buildings when they're being constructed. Right till the whole construction is done, you will not remove that. Now let's come to the cherry. The top is not just a flat line. It is slightly flat and then it rises up on the sides. That's the silhouette. And then it comes down. My cherry has become much bigger, I think. But now I'm not going to change it. So while one might think that this would be a mistake and this is where you should change things, yes, you would be right. But also, this is a point where till you complete the picture, I'm afraid, you are never sure whether you've done something right or wrong. Like I said, the moment you add a patch of a different color or a different tone in your picture, you don't know whether the proportion is accurate or not. Another thing is blank space always looks bigger than a filled up space. It's like the difference between a journey from, say, Bombay to Pune, which is a 3 hour journey by yourself, uh, versus the same journey with your friends or your family. Very often, a journey which is occupied with conversation, it goes much faster than something that's like a solo journey. So here, if it's just blank space, the same amount of space over here will look very wide. But the moment you occupy it, it starts looking smaller. So even in this, like over here, this might look really wide right now. But we are going to add some lines. Here's another troublesome point. You might be tempted to do something like this. But in a sketch, I'm going to, at least this sketch, I want to avoid this. Notice how the paper wrapper around the cupcake gives the impression of 3 dimension. It's not just a zigzag line. So I would go to the extent of, in fact, counting how many folds this wrapper has. But even if we start off from the center, say, and then we say, okay, we have to divide this into a certain number of parts. So maybe 3 parts, and then you have a fold in the middle. 3 parts over here, 4 parts. 3 lines in between will make it into 4 parts. And as you come to the sides, those lines come a little closer. And they also radiate outward. And then you come to the tops and you put that a subtle line that keeps changing. So the line in the center will be like this. And as you go to the sides, it'll start bending towards the left or the right. Maybe not from right here. I have just exaggerated this so I could show you quickly. But if you just keep this round throughout, I'm afraid it'll look like an edging like you would have lace. Because that is almost 2 dimensional. It's not folding into itself. So this will not look like your 3D the way we want it to look. This is a more casual graphic 3D. So here it's a very subtle change. It's just a little bit of a curve, leaning a little to that side. By leaning, I mean this is leaning downwards. Here you will lean a little to the right. And here you will lean a little to the left. And that lean becomes more prominent as you go towards the side. But it's very subtle, so the lines aren't even joining in some places. And then the bottom, don't bring the line all the way to the bottom. Just bring the edge out. There's a little bit of a green here and a sauce or glaze or whatever flows through one and it comes and lands over here. Now this one we can shade once the drawing is done. So when you draw almost maybe 90% of the elements, you can start shading. Even then, don't get rid of the scaffolding if you can help it. And start shading using a very, very light tone. So hold your pencil far away and start shading the mid tones in a light tone. So the mid-tones are places where you don't have highlight or a light color or a very dark color. So you see that this section has almost like a ruby color. It's not a dark cherry color. So start putting down some graphite in those areas where you start seeing those mid-tones. There are some light tones in the center, but ignore them for the moment. And cover the cherry with that mid-tone. Now your pencil will be able to make tones which are as light as this. This is the lightest tone, which is just making contact with paper and grating the tip of your pencil against the grain of the paper. No pressure. Then you have one where you consciously add just a little bit of pressure. So you get a little more graphite down. And then you have one or more where you keep adding more and more pressure and you get darker and darker tones. So we are going to start with this one. So not the lightest, we will go to the lightest, but we want to start with a 1+ pressure. Cover the entire section where you have shadows in that tone. Shadows or color, leaving the highlight uncolored, and also the lighter tones. Now this is the point where you'll end up relaxing a little bit, and before you know it, you'll be removing your left hand from the book. So consciously keep your book held. Now we are going to bring this shading down into the syrup and shade that all over also with a very light shade. Now that you're comfortable with shading, I assume, you can bring your shading down to the lightest tone. And do this very slowly. Oh, by the way, that's another thing, Malika. I tend to go at a certain pace, and unless I hear some moans and groans from the students, I will not stop. So, not that I'm encouraging to moan and groan, but if you feel that you would like a minute or two, feel free. I do stop, ask the other students. I will not just bulldoze through. So, take your time. So the idea behind pencil sketching intensively like this is to allow this is like a first date moment. You are interested in this topic is interested in you. So you are finding out as much as you can about this topic and you're asking all sorts of questions. So I would encourage an internal dialogue where you are looking at color, tone, shape, sizes, proportions, and you are kind of, I'll give you a sense of what kind of dialogue this could be. Like you've met the subject, the fact that you have a reference image means that it's not a surprise. You are seeing the image. So it's like a friend has recommended somebody and you're on a date with them. So they've given you a little idea about them that, yeah, they're quiet or they enjoy music or something like that. And now you're verifying that information. So what kind of music do you like? And then they say, oh, I just love hip hop. And then you say, oh my God, okay, hip hop, damn it, that was a mistake. So that would be when you have made some mistake and you say, okay, let me recalibrate my information. They do not like classical, they like hip hop. So that's when you see yourself correcting a line. So when you have made a line somewhere, it's an impression that you have had as a first impression. And then the more interaction you have with the subject, it's the more questions you ask, So there's nothing wrong with hip hop. It's just something that maybe your expectations did not expect. So you have to just rearrange that information in your head. That's about it. Okay, so I've often found that when I was beginning to sketch or beginning to draw, there were too many questions and too much of uh, there's bewilderment. What should I do? What should I do? I don't know what to do. So the what should I do part helped me. I came to it myself when I realized that all the answers are here. Instead of drawing a line over here, I should have drawn it a little inside. That's it. But I need to know what I am doing, why I am doing this, and if what I am doing is what I actually want to do. Okay. So so feel free to if you're alone and doing this, you can even ask those questions aloud. And once in a while, I do catch myself saying, "What are you doing? What is this? No, stop it." Or, okay, this turned out much better than I thought it would. Anything, it helps. Right. So now the midtones are in, at least in the cherry part. Uh, in the bottom, we can keep adding these as we see them. You will see that close to the main line, it's a little darker, and as it comes towards the other line, the shading will become a little lighter. That's because the edge of that paper will have come away from the batter in baking. So I, being a nerd, will think about all these things also. Why is it like that? And what does it mean? And I encourage everyone to allow their inner, I can't say it in English, अपने अंदर के nerd को जिंदा करो. Ask those questions. But for drawing purposes, you really don't need to ask those questions also. You just see things and you just put it down pretty much like a computer or a printer. I see a dark here, I will put a dark here. I see it a mid-tone here, I'll put a mid-tone here. I see texture here, I will put a texture here. Literally making a print of something. And a printer does not get into these questions of whether it's batter or whether it has come off, whether it's paper. It prints faithfully what it sees. So that's basically what we have to do. If you can do even that much, that's nerdy enough. Okay, Tarini, how are you doing? You're very quiet.
Yeah, very well. I have a lot of work going on at home, so
Oh,
to
okay.
distract. Yeah, that's okay, but I'm managing well. Thanks.
Okay, okay. Now for the light tones, at this point, the pencil shading should be so light that these lines might start interfering. So at this point, if you've got that flexible eraser, just knead it into a point like that. And use the tip almost like a pencil to remove only the lines that you don't want. A conventional eraser does not give us this flexibility as well. So the flexible eraser really helps. And you can use this opportunity now to erase any of the lines that you think you don't need. I would still say that until you're 100% sure, let them be. Remove only the lines that are pertinent for shading the next bit. And at the end, then we can remove all the other lines as well. Now here we have a very clever and very, very subtle shade going. So if you notice that there is a nice highlight on the top part, like this, almost like a donut shape, like a crescent shape here. So just move your pencil slightly from the middle or the bottom of each swirl upward, very, very gently. It should barely be visible and it can go through those crumbs of nougat or whatever. This is the most challenging part. This is like slow cycling. Cycling fast is not a big deal, but cycling slow or exercising control on your equipment is slightly difficult. You might see a few lines if you're not used to shading very lightly. Let those be. And again, start shading from the joint, from the dark line, and then move upward without rolling the pencil. Because one edge of that tip of the pencil will have become slightly blunt, and that blunt edge will give you a continuous shadow, which will be overlapping lines one on top of the other. So you won't get lines. You will just get that little shade. So I prefer to shade in the mid and light tones first. That way I can ascertain that everything is in the right place and the right proportion. And then I will finally go and make the darker tones. Okay, now this is one. Now we can start with the dark tones. So the dark tones will also have a particular shape. And you might have maybe two or even three different dark tones. So there'll be dark, darker, darkest. Start with maybe the darker or the darkest tone. So whatever you see, almost like a black shade, you can make that in the shapes that you see. And you will notice that just around that, you will also find the darker shades and the dark shades. And sometimes it's easy to go from the dark to darkest, but often you'll find it's easy to come from the darkest to dark, because then that is a smaller space. Like over here, there is there's a subtle shape right in the center of the dark shadow on the cherry, which is the darkest. So I'll make that, but not with a very sharp line. And I will shade that the darkest that my pencil can allow without creating marks and dents in the page. And it is going to be considerably smaller than the other shapes that will be around it, which when they go into place will make this shadow very subtle and soft. Right now it looks like a flat patch. But now along the periphery, I will add more depth in a shade that is just slightly lighter than this, but still dark enough. so that even if they merge, they're not a problem. But my pencil is not pressing the paper as much as the first one. So I get softer edges. And moving back and forth, I will just push this line into all the spaces where I feel it can get pretty dark. There's a little subtle shadow on the bottom here, and then it becomes dark again. And then there's a highlight on the right side of the cherry. Don't miss that out. Many circular objects will have that edge, a lighter side, a lighter highlight on the edge, and often the opposite edge of where the strong primary highlight is. And now in this process, you will start seeing that there are so many smaller, subtler shapes within even these. Some are just like a little C shape. Then there's like a little rectangular shape or a triangular shape that's poking outward. That's the whole exercise of pencil shading, to notice these subtle shapes. When we start painting, you will not see these, unfortunately. So pencil shading is our best bet. Now, when you come down, you'll notice that the shadow on the cherry continues into the shadow on the syrup. And just a few light points of highlight. And then a very smooth transition into a mid-tone. And then the rest is actually even a light tone, not so dark or deep at all, with a few lines of dark here and there. Now there's a little indent here, so I'll make that shape subtly. Now again, there are lots of highlights over here in the drop in the foreground. So highlight is nothing, you just have to shade around it. Leave that pencil. So this is again the part that scares non-watercolor people. We have to identify the highlights first, and we have to leave that first. And what if I make a mistake? So Obviously, this is a tactic that nobody should use. There's no what if you can see it. It's not as if you can't see the highlight. You just see it, you make it in that place and don't paint it. Mm. It's like maybe you see a cupcake in uh, display rack. You just look at it and you say, oh my God, what if I eat it? No, you can control that action. Don't. Okay, are you getting it? Any problems so far?
It's going good.
Okay, good. Now for the grainy parts, we need to keep them a little light, but yet not as light as the frosting. So the trick over here is to just put a scribbly texture, mostly in the bottom or where it comes into contact with the lighter portions. If you make it too dark, then it could look like chocolate also perhaps. So you know that you can't go more than a mid-tone on this. But it also must have ample highlights so that it does not look like just a sprinkling of something that is part of the, I guess, syrup or something that's dark. So here it's a scribble of different shadows. And if you don't know what to do where, just where it comes in contact with the creamy frosting, there make the shapes a little darker. And if there is a chance, look for a subtle shadow underneath these parts. If it's possible to make that. Otherwise, of course, don't bother. And in all of these places, the less lines in your shading you can keep visible, the better. So I'm making a slightly dark line around the bottom in some places, not the entire space, but maybe I'll make something like over here. There's already a line over here, so I want to enhance that. And then of course I'll make this line sharper. So that little piece nugget can be silhouetted against the dark syrup. And that's it. Now we can get rid of all the lines. And as you proceed, you might come to a point where you want to add more shades or more darkness. This now, mind you, we have made all this in one pencil. If you really want to make this more dramatic, you can also attempt the same thing in multiple pencils. Those pencils will all have a different capability of darkness and lightness, softness. So you can make your own much darker sketch going from here also. Okay, I don't like this unfinished tip. So I'm going to make a scribbly end of the stalk for myself, which is just making a scribble line that's lighter on one side and darker on the other. So that looks like it's just broken off. Okay. Now let's move to color. Now we are going to do the second piece, that is the strawberry that is dipped in chocolate. So here we are going to focus more on rendering the chocolate bit. As you can see, the strawberry has a few complications. It's not difficult, but it might take time. So I don't want to take that time right now first. So we will first focus on the dark chocolate. And we will draw the strawberry, draw the details, and then if time permits, we'll come back to painting the strawberry as well. Not the best strategy because strawberry has a lighter color. It should be painted first and then we should paint the chocolate, but let's experiment. So here again, we go with, to start off, we will start with basic shapes to figure out how we are going to make this. The left side of the strawberry is pretty much a straight line. And at some point, this line becomes a triangle in such a way that you can make a line going towards somewhere between, let's say this is 12 o'clock, this is 3 o'clock, exactly at 45 degrees. Then you will make a line that cuts the end at a particular angle again. And now we need to figure out how tall the strawberry goes. And most of this will probably have to be done visually. But let's say this is the strawberry you have made. The chocolate is a certain halfway distance higher than the strawberry itself. So what this tells us that we are not going to make, definitely not going to make a strawberry that is too wide. And it's not going to be like this, right? So the first few lines at least tell you that you start off with a straight line. That's here. Then you break it over here, which is just part of, and if you look at it, this, and this almost looks like, these two look almost the same, and this is just a little shorter. So again, it gives you some visual indication. And then you take this line towards somewhere between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock. And then you cut off the edges. And then you join them. And then it's a matter of just putting in that shape. The drip comes down from the bottom edge. And then at how much, let's say this is the triangle we've drawn, we could use the triangle tip also to measure how far that the drop goes further down. Now, this is not the only way you can make the grid. You can come up with your own way of making the grid. It's all about how you see things and how you want to measure stuff. Right, I'm sharing that in the Saturday group also. Okay, now the lines help you to decide how big you want to make the strawberry. If I make the lines so small, the strawberry is going to be this small. If I make it bigger, I can make a bigger strawberry. So first I draw one line that's vertical. You can also draw a horizontal line, just a small subtle horizontal line. And then you know where the 45-degree line would be. Take it up. Theoretically, we can make our strawberry as small as or as large as we want within this triangle itself. So let's say I cut my strawberry somewhere over here. This line that I'm cutting at is not perpendicular. It leans a little towards the left. If this were the perpendicular line, it goes a little straighter. And I have to then make the size of the strawberry a little bigger as the half point and use the same for the front. And this is where my triangle will end. Something similar on this side and this side. This is my triangle. Now check the angle you make over here with the angle that you see in the reference image. And then we can use this to start drawing. And here all the subtle shapes can be made immediately. You don't have to first make the broken lines. You can make all the subtle shapes as you draw. So the side or the rounded side of the strawberry comes up more or less like this. And if you want, we can add more lines to know exactly where the stalk would be. If you feel you need any more information, just draw more lines on the given grid. At every point, though, at this point, keep checking whether the lines you are making are in the right direction. So you need to know these things about lines. One is direction. Two is length. Three is its nature. So is it a straight line? Is it a wobbly line? Is it a rounded line? And with every line you draw, just say, okay, what direction am I heading? Okay, southwest. Or at 4 o'clock or 8 o'clock. How far do I have to go? And use at least one element which is within your reference image as a unit to draw the rest. Now let's come to drawing the actual chocolate part. And in this also you can draw a grid. So all the elements are in a certain proportion to each other. It is paramount that those proportions are maintained to get the right picture down. So we have proportion and we have placement. Now, in order to maintain the proportion or also to test whether you've got the proportion right, in both cases, you can start drawing these seeds. I know it looks like a lot and it looks like a very painful exercise, but start with one seed that you can see. That's somewhere over here, say. Then above that, you have how many seeds? In this space alone, you have to accommodate 3 seeds in a line, one on top of the other. No more than that. So that helps you to measure how big your seed has to be. When we change the proportion of our drawing and we make something that is bigger, you have to notice that everything is going to enlarge. So you make the seed and you make that dent or depression around the seed. Then you will find that you will be able to make the seeds in the neighborhood also, because they all follow a slightly offset repeat pattern. Where you don't see the seeds at all, don't even bother. Here you see the seeds and their placement because of the highlight around it. But in a sense, what I'm trying to say is, often I've noticed that if you don't pay attention to the number, you would land up making 10 seeds over here just because you can. And then your whole strawberry looks like some kind of alien, artificially created strawberry, which has far too many seeds and it's as big as a clubhouse. As you move sideways, you will see that the depression around the strawberries is not that evident. And there is a smaller, subtler highlight in some places. So it often happens that you will tend to lose your place. You don't know what you're drawing in things like these. So you notice a pattern. Like over here, there's a pattern that goes in a diagonal form. And to some extent, you can fudge these details also. Like these are in a row, then you will have this over here in a row. And then you have one more seed over here, which is in this row. And after all, in most fruit or vegetables, anything made in nature, there are no guarantees that everything is going to be perfect. That is so great for artists. In fact, the less perfect you make something, the more natural it looks. Most ironic. So in my early years, I worked as a graphic designer and graphic visualizer. So I used to try really hard. This was the nascent age of the computer, when literally I have used a keyboard to draw a strawberry, up and down keys to draw strawberries. So I wish I had samples of that to show you that it is possible. And in that, I tried really hard to get some semblance of reality in the strawberry through just making a shape of a highlight in the right place and just allow the brain to recall something from its memory. And then I spent many years working on softwares in which I tried in vain to create vector illustrations of subtle shadows. So I know how difficult it is for algorithms to make objects look natural. Then I encounter a whole bunch of students or pre-students, I would say, before they join class, whose idea of a good drawing is perfection. That means a strawberry should be perfect. And if you ask all the strawberries in the world, the ones that can talk back to us, and which of you would you say is the perfect strawberry? And they would say, we all are perfect. So that's the difference. We assume that there is one thing that is perfect and nobody knows it, but you are fairly certain that you are not that, or you will never get that. It's like chasing a shadow. Right. So now I have gotten rid of the few guidelines around my strawberry because now I want to focus on bringing the highlights and shadows in. I think after the cupcake exercise, you should be able to do this fairly easy because it is just three different shades. Let me share this one more time so I can explain. We have a very, very bright highlight in these two places, which almost looks like white in color. And then we have something on the right-hand side. Now, if you peer very closely into that shape, it's almost like a ghostly shape. And it has color. It has some kind of grayish color. So we have to just recreate that color in that form. So somewhere over here, that color is slightly deeper. And as it comes down, it becomes slightly lighter in a few places and then becomes deeper around the edges again, right? That's all. Then if we look at the chocolate, we have the whole thing is chocolate actually, but if we break it down, we'll notice that the chocolate also is slightly light brown over here, deeper over here. Funnily enough, it is deeper around the secondary highlight. The highlight comes from probably the bounced light that we have from the surface or an adjoining object. And then it drips down into this circle of a drop where again the highlight is on the left. So we are going to subtly mark all these shapes. Shape number one, shape number two. If you want, you can mark these two also, but no need. Shape number three and this shape number four, and then paint around it. Okay. So just like we made the shapes in the cupcake and the cherry, we will make the shapes over here very lightly, the overall silhouette of that shape. You don't need to put in too many details. And even if you get a semblance of maybe 60-70% of what we have, that's good enough. Again, now when you're drawing, keep your pencil very light, hold it far away. As a practice, try drawing your lines, horizontal lines, holding your pencil upright, and vertical lines, holding your pencil sideways. So be ready to move the pencil around as your line moves. One purpose of holding the pencil far away is so that there's enough room around the artwork for you to see what your line is doing. It's like a bird's eye view when you're traveling. And only when you are almost done, then you can go back in and make a tiny detail and then quickly move outward. Okay, I'll just give you a minute. I'm going to go and get some water, please. All right. Now, before we paint the strawberry, since it's Malika's first day, I don't want to spook her with lots of technique. We will just do a little bit of warm up of watercolor also. So let's make a circle with a highlight. So this is going to be like, imagine a drop of um, chocolate. So this is one highlight, which is a primary highlight. And we will also make a secondary highlight, which is this one, this color, on the bottom in a crescent shape. So while the primary highlight is almost circular in shape, the secondary highlight usually follows the shape of the edge. Now we'll paint the entire bead in not the entire bead, sorry. So the secondary shade and the edge here, we are going to paint this in a cobalt blue shade, but I want you to watch this before painting. Don't paint with me, watch first. So I have used a cobalt blue shade, that's this shade, and it's not very dark. There's more water than paint in this. And this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to apply that paint to the top of the secondary shade. And it's also around the shape a little bit. Wash my brush, wipe it, and then pull that color down into that shape. So there's a very subtle change in the color. Okay, just do this part because we have to wait for this blue to dry. I will wait and you can paint the blue part. I'll put the colors down over here as well. Okay, you should be done by now. Don't overpaint it. Don't go over and over it. Whatever you do in one shot is good enough. Now we will make a mix for the chocolate color. In the palette, your burnt umber will look like the perfect color for chocolate. But as far as possible, don't use any one single color to paint the body of an object. So I'm mixing that with the following colors. Crimson, that's this red. There's already some crimson over there. So this is burnt umber, crimson, a little bit of ultramarine blue, which will create a slightly purplish shade in our mixture. And to this, we will add black. Now, when you're mixing colors also, don't make one big puddle of everything. You can, every new color, especially if it's a very dramatic change, add it to the corners, see what it's doing to your colors. And then only once you're comfortable with that addition working in your favor, should you mix it to the whole puddle. Never enter a puddle mixture in the center. Right, now this color also, we have to add it in batches. So first color, this is going to be our dark chocolate color. The first color we put in will be burnt umber in itself, but it is then going to mix with the new shade. So I want to show you this. Again, don't paint with me. Observe this first and then paint afterwards. So here I am starting the painting with just plain burnt umber. And as you can see, it looks incredibly flat. Now, as you start coming down, you can increase the pigment. So make the color a little drier. And don't let the edge dry. Before it starts drying, start adding your chocolate color while it is wet. So making perpendicular strokes within the mixture to add your chocolate. Okay, just let me finish this whole thing and then start painting, okay? Because as you come down now, you can start even adding more. If you feel the need to, you can add even black. Just a little bit, just at the base. Okay. So we have a mix of, first we will put burnt umber, and then the mix that I've made has these 4 colors. This is burnt umber, crimson, ultramarine blue, and black. Okay, Tarini, you want to leave now? You can leave at your convenience, and then you can watch the remaining in the video later on.
Aditi, even I'll leave in 5 minutes. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay. So I'll try and finish at least the
Yeah.
illustration of the chocolate. I think
Sure.
Ritika will hang around. So
Okay.
it will be completed in the recording. So when I
Sure.
share the recording with you, you can just come right down to 1 hour and 25 minutes or something and watch the rest.
All right. Thanks so much.
Okay, bye, Malika.
No, I'm here for another 5 minutes. Then I'll go.
Okay, all right, okay. Okay, now once you're done with that, we add a few subtle shadows and some shapes in this itself. Like for example, take a thin brush now and just with very little paint, you can make a few shapes inside this. Go along the edge of that shape because it can't be this firm. Use a little bit of burnt umber and change the edge a little bit. So just a few places where you add some shapes will change the look of that shadow. And you can do this whole exercise as a second overlayer on top of this to add more depth. So in the second layer, this is what I'm going to do. I want you to just again observe this first. So we can, in the second layer, ideally paint something else or paint something less. So the else part is going to be, and I'm going to bring in the color into the highlight just a little bit. And the less is going to be, I won't go all the way to the edge. I'll keep a little bit of color on the, I won't go all the way to the other side. And here I can add some wet paint just along the edge so that I can make the edge softer and not a very hard shape. So once you've put in that blue color, all of these shapes can change and you can put in whatever subtle shape you want. Now here we have a lot of shapes happening, and that's what I'll be doing. Because we have such a large space, we have to make a lot of paint and have it ready before we start painting that bit. So I'm now going to attempt this, the dipped strawberry, starting with a cobalt edge. And then I'm going to bring this down just with a wash.
Yeah, Aditi, I'll drop off now.
Yes, yes, okay.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Okay, see you, bye-bye. I think the color can go a little deeper, so I'm making this deeper with a cobalt blue and black mix. And from place to place, we just have to pay attention to where it becomes light and where it becomes dark. Ritika, do you also have to leave? Because if you need to, then I can still talk myself into this video and finish it on. Let me know.
Yeah, no, I don't have to.
Okay. Because I've done this in the past. Everyone had to leave, but I had to finish them.
Yeah. I'm very much keen to see this.
Okay. So the color, the subtle colors, no, they make a lot of difference afterwards. Now, while this is drying, I'll make the mix, the chocolate mix. So that's burnt umber, crimson, almost in equal quantity, ultramarine blue, and black, little by little. So this is the shade I have. So it's a nice deep reddish, brownish, purple color.
Aditi, I'm still here. Can you repeat the colors again, please?
Yeah, they're these burnt umber, crimson, ultramarine blue, and I'm adding the black to this, but I won't put the black right in the center. I'll start adding it here. And I can see that it's a little lightish. It's not as deep. So I want to add some other colors over here as well. Maybe more ultramarine blue and then black. So once I'm comfortable with this proportion, then I can bring that into the main color. So all these shades, the red, the blue, all of that contribute to the depth of the color. Once you mix it, you say it's not looking any different than burnt umber mixed with black. So why do we change? Why do we add two more colors to that? So when it comes to these lighter shades, that is which we are going to have some of, you will start noticing that that color matters. Okay, so now I am mixing I'm going to start painting from the left over here, but I will be leaving some sections unpainted because of highlight. Now, my paint is fairly watery. It's not as dense.
Aditi ma'am, the screen is little blurred.
Oh, sorry. That's because this is very close. Okay. Let's hope this is visible.
Yeah, now it's okay.
Okay. Now I'll follow the shape of the swirl that I see. So all the shapes are in that swirl itself. There are two small highlights here, which I'll try to retain. And as I come towards this edge, I will start increasing also the pigment, the burnt umber pigment itself, before I decide to insert the new color. So the painting part is fairly dynamic. You put in one color, then you press it, your brush down, you wipe it, you put in another color, you keep it very loose. Like in this case, I can make a very loose wash while I'm still in the middle of painting this edge.
Have you started only with burnt umber, Aditi?
Yes, this is just burnt up.
Okay. I went on directly with the mixed color.
No, I'm telling you, don't paint with me. Observe this.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so the whole thing is going to be very dynamic. As you go, you will keep adding a different color for the effect that you need. Now at this point, I will start adding my deep shade. And I'm also holding the book at an angle. It's not flat, so that I can maintain the edge. I can keep the edge wet. And as it comes to the secondary highlight on the right, I will start making a sharp edge. In some places, of course, I will overlap, go into that so that I can get the edge that I want. And like I said earlier, in some places, if you feel the need, spontaneously add a black or a blue to change the shade and make it deeper or lighter as you think it's turning out. Because your eye is now moving on these pertinent lines. Now, in contrast to everything else, this portion will look really black, though you know that the color is not black. Change your brush at this point. Come down to a thinner brush. Repeat that process. Now we are going to go from dark to light. So make the edge. Bring down the paint into the right side of your drop. And this time we are going to blend it into a lighter color. So at this point now you can start inserting a little bit of burnt umber. Now see how I'm inserting this. You don't necessarily follow the same route. You keep the tip end side on the side of the mixture. And then you subtly bring that lighter color closer and closer to where you want the highlight. Closing in, finally washing the brush, making sure there isn't excess water, and then dragging that paint into the highlight with just that subtle shape in.
Oh, that's lovely. I can see what you mean now.
Good. Okay. All right. So let me continue from the rest of the space. Here, mostly the chocolate color is dark because it's in the shadow area. But the shapes on the top are slightly different. They are thick in some places, they are thin in some places, and they're also a little wobbly depending upon what the chocolate is covering from inside. There would be some seeds, some flesh. And just this is the dark color that I'll bring from the right. Now, number two, keep filling in color very frequently because firstly because of the weather and also because of our application, the size of the brush and all, there is a chance that your brush runs out of the true shade that you need and you will get a lighter shade in your brush and you don't want that. So now we have filled in most of the chocolate part, but this is just layer one. And then we will go in and paint the inside part of it. Do you want to attempt this while I?
Yes.
Huh? Okay.
Yes.
Then I'll wait for the first layer to dry. And do it slowly. I am in no rush. Take your time. Keep 3 brushes handy, a number 6, a number 4, and a fine line brush, like a number 1 or number 0. I'll be right back. Huh? How's it going?
So I'm leaving now, Aditi. But
Okay.
thank you so much. I've managed to. Let me show you.
Yes. Okay.
Is it visible?
1 second. Oh, nice. It's looking good.
Yeah, I'm quite pleased with it. Never imagined
Very
I could do it.
nice. Yeah.
But fairly okay, I would say. Yeah,
I think, yeah, you've got the highlight, you've got the
right.
subtle shadow. Very cool. I'm
Yeah,
very pleased.
happy with it.
Good.
Yeah. So I'll catch up later in the recording and
Yes.
say bye now.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
See you.
Ritika, let's see yours.
Yes.
Ah, nice. But your color can be still darker, I think.
Yes. But
Oh.
yeah, I think first time I was holding three brushes and then trying to figure out, which shade is going which side. But it was very nice. Yeah.
Okay, I'll just do the second layer. This you can watch and maybe do later also. So it's the same colors now. If you notice that in this patch, it's a little deeper and there are more, I guess, lines to
Yeah.
it. So we repeat the same process again with the with burnt umber and a little bit of the darker color. And that too, you can put it in a few places, as always, to miss out on a few places. So I'm cleverly just not going right up to the edge because I want a little subtle difference between the edge and the darkness. But this part is going to be a little lighter than the part on the right.
So this one is the same shade which we made, right? The
Yeah,
burnt-
but more burnt umber. So I've made a separate patch over here which has more burnt umber, but I keep drawing in from the other color. And it's there in a few places, just very subtly. And in the first one, because I was explaining, I got a patch here, nice and solid patch. So here I'll add more color. And now I'll go back into that dark, deep color. So the second layer really helps in making your picture more robust. And you can also leave a few extra highlights in certain places. So now this will look more even. And I could even hazard at this point, because it's the deepest part of the chocolate, to put in a little bit of a black here. Just a pure black, just along this edge. Now for the shadow part, which is not fully shadow, it's a secondary highlight. Here you can add more subtle shapes, but in this line, like I just have a little bit of burnt umber, which I will add like this. So I'm adding a glaze on top of the existing shade of burnt umber. So it's a very light color. And it's just going to be in some parts with a wet brush, I'm going to make it subtle. And in some places there are dark spots, I'll just make those shapes. And then add depth even in that with a finer brush. So it's not all just lines. So there will be some dots maybe, or just a small brush going, splattering across. And then this over here, you have that dark shadow here, which can also again just be a black. Now the same thing, the same dark color, you can make some shapes over here. Because in all of this also, there is a little bit of the texture of chocolate is usually like a little grainy, and it's not as smooth as, say, steel.
Yeah.
So these few things, if you add, it can make the texture look so much more believable. That should do it.
Yes. This looks so nice.
Now imagine the rest. The strawberry will be very easy, you'll see.
Yeah. I, I was just imagining maybe, we would have done live strawberry sketching at like proper pencil sketching and everything live when we had strawberries in Mahabaleshwar.
Oh yeah, we should have.
But this was fun.
Good. Okay, this is nice. So I'm gonna try during the rest of the day to complete the strawberry also, but it'll be like a what is it, time lapse. So I'll show the colors later on and you can then complete accordingly. Okay,
So we
cool.
have class now 3 to 5, na? The travel one.
Yeah, we have 3 to 5, but I'm still just going to do the map and the flag. But if you have any other pictures, please share.
Yeah, I will just check. Yes.
All right.
See you.
Okay, see you at 3.
Bye-bye.
Bye.